Hello and welcome to Mind Shifters Radio. I'm Tim Hayes. I'm your host for the first hour. And today is Monday, February 1st, 2021. As always, we're grateful to everyone who's joining us here today, whether you're listening live or through the archives, as we spend another couple of hours teaching and supporting people in using some of the most powerful, effective, efficient, and accessible tools that I've ever encountered in my 46 years of doing therapy. These tools are available gratefully, absolutely free at whyagain.org. If you go to that website and click on the red and white bullseye or the link in the upper left-hand corner of most pages that says Start Here, it will take you to a page where you can download and read Chapter 24 of Dr. Michael Ryce's book. His book is titled, Why Is This Happening to Me Again? And that chapter of that book is a narrative description of the primary tool in this work. It's called the Reality Management Worksheet, sometimes called the Reality Management Wake Up Sheet. And it's a tool I've been using for over 16 years to improve my life, my relationships, my emotional state. And you can also print off the actual worksheet itself, download it and print it off as often as you'd like. You can download a whole host of audio files of shows just like this one where people have been stepped through that worksheet process, people who called in with real-life problems and applied that tool and saw the benefit. Some of those audio files of shows are ones where people have called in and given powerful testimonials about how the application of these tools in their life has led to positive, powerful results. And you can also go to your app store and type in the three words HeartLand Aramaic Forgiveness and get access to a completely free and private app that contains a Reality Management Worksheet, an abbreviated version of that worksheet process, and a copy of the Dragon Klingon game, which is a wonderful way to introduce these tools to even younger audiences. And we encourage people to do that soon and often, because when you do, it gives you the primary goal of this work, which is to have an experience that leads you forward in your life, have an experience of the power of your own ability to tap into an inner wisdom within yourself and to create a different life experience. Regardless of what life brings to you, you are the one who creates your experience of those people, situations, events. So we are encouraging people to download the worksheet process, go to the App Store and get it, and put it to work in your life, and then call us and let us know what your experience has been. Let us know if we can support you in one way or another. Our call-in number is 563-999-3581. If you call that number and press 1, it'll put a little question mark by your phone number, and I'll announce you by your area code. We are in the 32nd day of the year, February 1st, and we're doing the Course in Miracles lessons. And so the lesson for today is lesson 32, and the lesson reads simply, I have invented the world I see. And this is just a very, direct statement of what we know from research about perception, that we are each creating our own perception moment to moment. This is just a very simple, direct statement that the Course has been trying to get us to step into and recognize from the beginning of these lessons, that we are creating our experience of life, and we are not taught that we are creating our experience of life. We are taught in our culture that our perception is simply a passive process. We open our eyes, we have our ears open, and we experience life just as it is. Whereas the truth of our life is that each of us creates our own perception, each of us with our interpretations of the events in life, each of us with our selective attention to certain parts of it, create what we receive from our senses, and each of us then creates our interpretation of that based on our past history and traumas and all that good stuff. So today's lesson makes it very explicit. I have invented the world I see. The commentary reads as follows. Today we are continuing to develop the theme of cause and effect. You are not the victim of the world you see because you invented the world you see. You can give it up as easily as you made it up. You will see it or not see it as you wish. While you want, you will see it. When you no longer want, you will not. It will not be there for you to see. The idea for today, like the preceding ones, applies to your inner and outer worlds, which are actually the same. However, since you see them as different, the practice periods for today will again include two phases. One involving the world you see outside you, the other involving the world you see in your mind. In today's exercises, try to introduce the thought that both are in your imagination. Again, we will begin the practice periods for the morning and evening by repeating the idea for the day 2 or 3 times while looking around at the world you see as though it's outside of yourself. Then close your eyes and look around your inner world. Try to treat them as equally as possible. Repeat the idea for today unhurriedly, slowly, carefully, as often as you wish, as you watch the images your imagination presents to your awareness. For the 2 longer practice periods, 3 to 5 minutes, are recommended, with not less than 3 required. More than 5 can be utilized. If you find the exercise restful, easy, flowing, to facilitate this, select a time when few distractions are anticipated and when you yourself feel reasonably ready. These exercises are also to be continued during the day as often as possible. The shorter applications consist of repeating the idea slowly as you survey either your inner or outer world. It does not matter which you choose. The idea for today should also be applied immediately to any situation that you believe distresses you. Apply the idea by telling yourself, I have invented this situation as I see it. So the thought for today, I have invented the world I see. And we've also agreed to do Pam Grout's book, The Course in Miracles Experiment. The 32nd chapter of that book is titled, We Are All Thomas Edison. And she quotes Federico Fellini, who said, there is no end, there is no beginning, there is only the infinite passion of life. Pam writes, in the quantum world, there is no such thing as absolutes. No one reality is truer than any other. The quantum field is an infinite mashup of possibilities. The quantum field contains countless waves dancing around in countless states, countless positions, countless possibilities. Each has its own energy and frequency. It isn't until the waves are measured or chosen that they coalesce into one material reality, thus destroying the original configuration where, quote, all is possible, close quotes. Once we decide that, let's say, quote, life is a struggle, close quote, or that, quote, people always disappoint me, close quotes, we collapse that wave and lose touch with all the rest. Lesson 32 explains it like this. I have invented the world I see. So today I ask myself, do I want to continue inventing a world out of my complaints? Or do I want to invent a world from oneness and joy and peace? The material world as it's currently configured is based on fear. It is based on the belief that everything is out to get us. Our politicians, our food, our bodies, which we examine regularly for breakdowns in yearly checkups. In other countries, even our lovers, whom we've been warned to examine for signs that he's just not that into us. Every news report, every commission, every political speech, every self-help book is based on our unending fascination with, quote, what's wrong, close quotes. We take pills, we buy energy drinks, we twist ourselves into yoga poses, we chant, we meditate, we pray to some nebulous deity in a fruitless search to correct all the wrong in our lives, or the wrong we've been warned is coming. The Course tells us that by treating, analyzing, and working so diligently to annihilate problems, we give them the power to govern us. By exercising such extreme efforts to, quote, avoid, close quotes, our inevitable demise, we actually facilitate the very demise we're hoping to avert. So today I acknowledge that I made this world up. In 2 3 to 5 minute practice periods, I commit to using my brilliant inventor, my mind, not to complain or whine or look for problems, but to envision a luminous, happy, beautiful world for everyone. I have invented the world I see. So that's our lesson for today, and we are available for comments, questions, answers, soliloquies, 563-999-3581. If you call that number and press 1, we can have a conversation. Area code 520, you're in the air. Who do we have?
This is Audrey.
Hello, Audrey. How are you?
I am well, and I would like to have some support.
How can we support you?
I've listened to I Have Invented the World I See. And I react when someone is helping me, when I can do the task myself. I find I resent it. So that is a negative thought, okay? And I go back and I'm listening to about the neuropeptides and how when I have a negative thought, what happens to the neuropeptides. Now, in my past, I had polio. That's my story. I was always first runner. I never came in second. So then I had the illness of polio. At that time, I was experiencing loss, grief, anger, many other negative emotions. Now I come to the present, and when someone helps me and I am capable of doing it, but I haven't asked them, there are times where I resent it. So therefore, I'm inventing the world I see, and I go, isn't it awful? But I go at the conversely, I say, what is right with the situation? And then I go back to the experience of polio. There were many, many nurses, physical therapy, doctors, all who have cooperated so that I gained the use of my legs. No longer was I paralyzed. I went back in the race for the very first time. Then I became the first runner. Presently, I find myself dealing with resentment. Okay? I want to dissolve that negative emotion. And when I'm working the worksheet, there are so many aspects of this negative emotion as I described. Now, when these neuropeptides are in my structure, and I go from...
Well, let me ask you to think differently about this. Take a breath for a minute. Let me ask you to think differently about this. Let me ask you to think about neuropeptides not as being in your structure, but to think about neuropeptides as energies, because that's all they are. They aren't really matter until they've been collapsed into that matter state. They are energies. And Einstein would say energies which have been so lowered in their vibration as to become visible to your senses. There is no matter.
Okay.
And so there's an energy that's in your system. Okay? And
yes.
And so this set of tools with the Reality Management Worksheet process would have you just go again and again and again to another worksheet and another and another and another with a slightly different focus or exactly the same focus time and time again for your thoughts about your life situation with this this energy that was called polio, and the resentment that you're generating with your thoughts today. And one worksheet at a time, one EFT tapping session at a time, one set of hours that you spend with targeted journaling at a time, you will begin to dismantle those energies. But those energies, as they exist now, they only exist as the energies in your system which manifest as your thoughts that lead you to the emotion of resentment. Does that make sense? So don't make it harder.
Sense.
Yeah, and don't make it harder than it needs to be. Just say, oh, I still have this energy of resentment, which means it's manifesting in terms of thought, and that's manifesting as emotion. And so I'm going to do another worksheet. I'm going to do as many worksheets as I need to until I no longer have the energy in my system which manifests as a thought, this shouldn't have happened to me, and it's not fair, and whatever, that generates the resentment. And what you'll notice, the more worksheets you do, what you'll notice is there will be more different thoughts you can use to generate that emotion of resentment. And so each negative thought that I have needs to be put on a worksheet and worked through so that I can get access to the hidden part of my mind and let it flow through me, dissolve it, cancel my attachment to it. So one worksheet at a time, one specific thought at a time, one emotion at a time. So rather than thinking about them as neuropeptides that are in my system or stuck in my system or that got put there, think just in terms of neuropeptides as energies.
Thank you. Thank you. I was making it something very simple, so complex. And now I go back to keep it simple and do the worksheets. And I thank you for the explanation. I see it's the same concept I hear over and over again. And as I do my inner work, I will dissolve the thought of, let's put it this way, ain't it awful, to isn't it beautiful? And I thank you. Blessings.
You're very welcome. Thank you for the call. Blessings to you. So our call-in number is 563-999-3581. How can we support you today? We have, in the work I do, I'm routinely running into people who are struggling with family members who are struggling or not, who are experiencing, who are involved with addictive problems, self-destructive patterns. And I had a young woman in my office earlier this morning who was, for the past year and a half to 2 years, been trying to get her father to understand that he has a drinking problem. And of course, he's been in complete denial about it, despite a number of episodes that would leave most people absolutely running for help. And the bottom line is that this weekend he managed to get arrested for driving under the influence. So one would hope that that would be, the final wake-up call, and that there won't be any more resistance to getting treatment and changing. However, there's zero guarantee of that. There are many, many people who hit what most of us would consider hit bottom multiple times before, if they ever decide to get help. And there's a wonderful set of understandings that if we focus on other people's issues, we're focusing on things we don't have any control over, and so we will automatically, whatever else happens, we will increase our own sense of being out of control. So we had somebody who came up with a list of things to let go of, things to throw in the fire, things to substitute for better habits. So here are bad habits. It's a bad habit for me to get between you and your pain. I think I'll get rid of that habit. It's a bad habit that I have of thinking that you need me to suffer if you are suffering. I think I'll get rid of that habit. It's a bad habit for me thinking that if I'm happy and at peace while you are not, that I'm somehow hurting you. I think I'll get rid of that habit. It's a bad habit for me to make my joy depend on your being okay. I think I'll get rid of that habit. It's a bad habit for me to have the urge to fix you or your situation. I think I'll get rid of that habit. It's a bad habit for me to think that I know better than you do about how to live your life. I think I'll get rid of that habit. It's a bad habit for me to have this overpowering urge to rescue you. I think I'll get rid of that habit. It's a bad habit for me to not trust you to have your own journey. It's a bad habit for me to not trust that God, love, truth knows better than I do. I think I'll get rid of that habit. It's a bad habit for me to not listen with my whole heart. And it's a really bad habit for me to believe words are better than silence. So I think I'll get rid of those habits. And I used that list of bad habits that might be useful for me to get rid of with that 20-something in my office today, and she was quite impressed. Moved to the point of tears, one would say, if one were being honest. And I would encourage everybody listening, if you have a family member who is doing something that you think is unproductive or unhealthy, and you think you know better than they do, and you think you're essential in fixing or turning their situation around, to consider the possibility that that's not really how it works. And to do whatever you can to focus more on the things you actually have control over, and less, and perhaps none, on the things you have no control over. As you do that, and you focus on the things that can make your life more safe, more sane, and more livable, it can only be good for everyone you care about. You know, we have a lot of consideration in our culture about needing to be thinking about others and doing for others, and then we redefine that as if I do something that's for my own good or for my own benefit, that it's selfish. And Dr. Michael Ryce would like to help us shift our terminology around that and call it self-wise rather than selfish. So, you know, it's kind of the same kind of shift we make when we say we want to be childlike rather than childish. So I can take those qualities that many of us had when we were children and use them in a productive way, rather than taking the worst of them as kind of basic coping skills and use them as weapons in my life today. So if I do something that is truly good for me, capital T, truth, actually good for me, it can only be good for everyone around me because we're all connected. So when I learn to focus on the things I have control over, and I learn to recognize and refuse to continue to do what so many of us have been trained to do, which is to focus on things we can't control and try to leverage other people to do things we want them to do, rather than understand that we all have our own path to walk. If I learn to focus on what I truly have control over and use it to make my life more safe, more sane, more livable, regardless of what the people around me are choosing to do, what I'm doing is good for me and everyone around me, even if those people may have a difficult time seeing the truth of that. The truth is true always. And if you're doing what is truly good for you, it can only be good for everyone else as well. And in this work, one of the best things I can do is use any negative emotional state I have as a wake-up call that it would be a very useful expenditure of my own energy to focus on what I have control over and pick up a reality management worksheet and fill it out and actually tap into a part of my mind that goes way beyond what my conscious logical mind has access to, and ask it to show me. Ask them, they, he, she, it, something outside of my conscious logical mind to show me how I'm the one who's actually creating this alarm system within me, this negative emotional state. And that's why this tool is being given away absolutely for free, because every time somebody uses it, they're focusing on something they actually have control over, and they're engaged in a process that has the full potential to make their life better, more safe, more sane, and more livable, regardless of what all the people around them are choosing to do. And it's as though I keep thinking of the various people I've worked with over the years who keep misattributing the cause and effect relationship dynamics that they experience. One of them is, simply because things happen in close proximity to each other, we often create the belief in a cause and effect relationship where there is none. And I had to give a talk at a church a long while ago now, a number of years ago now, and I had this image come to me, and a story developed. And the story is that there was an alien coming from another world to our world, and they got beamed down. They were one of those Star Trek beaming devices. And the world they came from has no oxygen, no air, no atmosphere. And so they got beamed down here in a protective suit that would protect them from all of the gases that float around that we call air, oxygen, nitrogen, etc., argon, all those things. And they got beamed into a house that had a beautiful garden, great big bay window. And they were waiting. They wanted to go out and explore the world outside, but they had this suit on that had to be plugged in, so they couldn't leave. There was no battery pack available yet. So while they were there for a couple weeks, it just so happened, it was just this weird coincidence, that every time they walked into this one room that had a great big bay window that looked out over the garden, it was completely still. There was no motion, no movement. And then, the far end of the garden, the trees began to move, and soon after that, chimes up near the house that were hanging, decorative wind chimes, were hanging, they started to ring. And of course, it was an entirely new experience for this person from another world. They'd never heard a sound like that before. And every time they went into that room, it was perfectly still outside. There was no motion in the grass or the trees. And on the far side of the garden, the trees began to move, and soon after that, the wind chimes rang. And then eventually, we got the battery pack, and the first thing this visitor from another planet wanted to do was run out to the garden, run to the far end of the garden away from the house, grab a tree branch and start shaking it, and then look expectantly at the house. And after about the third time of grabbing that branch and looking at the house, I said to them, what are you doing? And the visitor said, well, I'm trying to make the chimes move. I'm trying to make that noise. I said, well, why are you doing that? He says, every time the trees move, it makes the chimes move, and then they make that great sound. it took quite a bit of convincing, multiple repetitions of shaking the tree without any sound coming from the wind chimes, to convince our visitor from another world that there was an entirely different force operating that they had no conception of and no way to sense or feel, that was making both the tree and the chimes move. They had made a false connection simply because these two events happened in close proximity. So what does this have to do with if we have somebody who is stuck in an abusive pattern, whether they're abusing alcohol or drugs or something else in a family? Well, if I'm abusing myself, if I'm abusing a substance, if I'm abusing another person, I'm going to generate consequences from that behavior. Yet, it may take a while for those consequences to manifest. And if something else happens right before those consequences manifest, I might, and other people might, want to attribute a cause and effect relationship to the events that happened just prior to the thing I didn't want. There was a patient I worked with for years, and she did a very, very abusive childhood, and we quite a bit of work. She did really, really good work for a lot of years. And then she was gone, and she was having a successful life, and she had been gone about 4 or 5 years. Then she came back, and she said, "I've got to see you. This is a terrible, tragic thing." I said, "Okay." I met with her, and she told me about a made-for-television movie. And in the made-for-television movie, there was an 18-year-old girl who had come out and told the authorities that her father had sexually abused her whole life. And she had this 20-year-old sister, or 21, 22-year-old sister, who still lived in the house, and that sister had a little child, a toddler. And everybody in the family was dumping on the 18-year-old. "Why are you doing this? You've got to be lying. Dad would never do that. Dad never did that to me. The father said, don't do this. Don't make up these lies. You're going to rip the family apart," etc. "If you talk about this, if you press charges, it's going to rip the family apart." The father kept telling her this over and over and over again. And the short version of the story is, eventually, one day the 22-year-old had her daughter in the bathtub, and the 22-year-old's boyfriend walked into the bathroom, and the toddler began screaming and crying. And in that moment, the 22-year-old remembered that's where her father used to abuse her too. And so she came out and she affirmed that she also had been abused by the father. And of course, now with the two daughters both saying it and the evidence that was there, the case was closed. He was found guilty. And my patient is reporting this to me, and she's saying, and the judge said, "Guilty as charged," and the next thing he said is, "And this child has to go to that foster home, and this child has to go to another foster home, and this child has to go live with these family members." And my patient said to me, "So the father was right. She did rip the family apart." Me the better part of the rest of the session to try to help my patient see that just because these brave young women stood up and told the truth does not mean that telling the truth ripped the family apart. Their actions happened right before the judge separated the family, but that doesn't mean their actions are what caused that family to be torn apart. I worked with her quite a while in that one session to help her understand that the thing that tore that family apart happened years ago when the father decided to use his children as sex objects. And there hadn't been a family, and there hadn't been a potential for healing until the truth was told. Simply because right after they told the truth, the judge said, "Okay, you're guilty, and now here you have to separate." It is erroneous to believe that them speaking up is what caused the family to be separated. That's drawing a cause and effect relationship between two variables simply because they happen close together in time. So, if the father, in the case of the young woman that I was seeing today, gets upset because the young woman decides that she doesn't want to have contact with him until he gets help because his alcoholism is a serious problem, and because drinking and driving is not something she wants in her life. And he bemoans the fact that he told her, and he says, "Oh, now that I've told you, that's causing you to leave. I should never have told you." That would be mistaking a cause and effect relationship between these two unrelated variables. The real cause, the real dynamic that's helping her make a choice to make her life more safe, more sane, more livable, regardless of what her father chooses to do, is her own inner growth and strength. The cause and effect relationship has more to do with his choice of abusive actions than it does his telling her about those actions. And the more we can understand that it is so beneficial for us and everyone who cares about us and everyone we're connected to be able to do what is truly good for us, and that in that process, it can only, always and forever, be good for everyone who cares about us and everyone connected to us, then we are freed to do more loving, healthy, health-promoting, growth-promoting behaviors in our own lives. And one of the most consistently loving, respectful, health-promoting behaviors that I have discovered in the past 17 years is the Reality Management Worksheet. And that, in conjunction with the rest of the tools on the whyagain.org website. So, we have 16 minutes left. I will take a breath and take a drink of water and ask if anybody has any questions or comments. 563-999-3581. Call that number and press 1 and we can have a conversation. What would be of use? How could we spend the last 15 minutes that might be of benefit? What is it that you can see in your life that helps you understand the cause and effect relationships and focusing only on those things that you actually have control over? And there might be a host of things other than just the Reality Management Worksheet, but 563-999-3581. Press 1 and we'll have a conversation. I had somebody recently that recommended Kate Duffy and her work, which is about educating families to the language of the addiction and the alcohol and drug addiction. And once they're educated about that language, they're far better equipped to do what I'm suggesting, which is to take action based on things they actually have control over that will be better for the individual and better for the family system. And one of the ways you can find out more about Kate Duffy is search for her on Facebook. And I interviewed her for the On Your Mind podcast, and she was talking about, this was quite a few months ago now, and she was talking about developing some online resources and support group. So that's that's a resource that I would encourage you to do. I think that I've gotten very good feedback about Kate. I got a very good sense when I did the interview with her. She's very solid, and she's continuing to learn and grow about how to help herself and to help families around the issues of addictions. I wonder if she's got another website, but but the way that I keep connected with her these days is on Facebook. Family Conversations, Changing the Language of Recovery. So, actually, that comes up as the JourneyStream.org podcast that we did with her. So that's one way to find out more about her work. You can also connect with her on Facebook. So our call-in number, 563-999-3581. We have 12 minutes left. How can we support you today? What's on your mind? What would be a useful way to spend the next 10 minutes of this portion of the show, and perhaps, if Michael makes time available, the second hour of Mind Shifters Radio today. 563-999-3581. We had a snowstorm here in the Chicago area. Much of the country has had different various levels of snow. And so we've seen lots of snow people and snow sculptures and stories of people sledding, and we've also had people who've been without heat and people who've had challenges. So our thoughts and positive thoughts and prayers go out to all of those people. And how can we support you? What is a comment or a question? What is something you'd like to have us explore? Today's a Monday, so we can't advertise a support group tonight, but there will be one tomorrow. And the information about that support group is available on mindshiftersacademy.org website. That participation in that group is available absolutely free. There's a separate information page for both the Tuesday and the Thursday group. And we would appreciate it if you would, you may join us, or if you would pass that information along to somebody that you think might be able to benefit from participation in a support group like that. We have continued through the coronavirus times to make both the Tuesday and the Thursday group available to people. And I thought I would mention again, since I finished it over the weekend, the book by Alan Cohen, The Tao Made Easy. It's kind of a follow-up to his book, Course in Miracles Made Easy. And here's a teacher who is very well versed in a wide range of spiritual teachings, who has written a number of books and has daily reader calendars and things like that for people that want to make their lives better. And both A Course in Miracles Made Easy and The Tao Made Easy were books that were very beneficial for me. The Course in Miracles Made Easy is one that I've put on the list to reread every couple of years, and it's in the same category as the book Awareness by Anthony DeMello. So again, we have the invitation we keep putting out. If you have a book like that you like to reread every few years, we would greatly appreciate your calling and sharing that with us, or send me an email at tjh@Mindshifters Academy, mindshifters-academy.org. Area code 610, is this Susan?
Hi, Dr. Tim. I have so many questions, but they're not ready to be asked. But one just really practical one is we've been talking about that book by Marcella Pixley. And I know that's not exactly the kind of book you're looking for, but you made a couple of comments yesterday, and I was wondering if you might be interested in, would she fit into the category of being someone you could interview, would like to?
Well, I'd certainly be happy to have a conversation with her to see if she would think so.
Yeah, okay.
You know, that book certainly has a lot of awareness of deep psychological issues.
Mm-hmm.
And you're talking about the book Trowbridge Road that you recommended that I read,
Yeah.
and it had the story of the two teens that had, one had an actively abusive life with a mother who was just tortured by germophobia and agoraphobia, and the other had a very was suffering from negligence from a mother who was very tortured with her own emotional issues. And so it's, it was a book, as you said, about love, the love of the grandmother and the love that both of the children were yearning for and found with each other. So yeah, there's a lot of psychological sophistication in someone who could write a book like that.
Yeah. Yeah, she's very gifted. I think about situations like that against the Course in Miracles lesson. We create the world that we live in, and we're not the victim of our world, and it's very hard to apply it in the case of child abuse.
Well, and of course, it's not really meant to be applied at that level. Guy Finley likes to talk about the concept of things being in scale, right? And so at one level of scale, one of the comments I made yesterday was, I would not step back and just let that person have her life. If I became aware that that person was doing that kind of thing to a child or any minor, I would do everything in my power to intervene. And once the child was ushered into a safer existence, then if the adult decided to continue to refuse help or do self-destructive things, I would, to a certain level, unless they were actively trying to kill themselves, I would have to just let that go. But I would not say, well, it's their life, I'll let them raise their child as they want. No, when it's actively abusive, I would not do that.
Yeah, you were questioning about...
It's the kind of thing that has had me throughout my career step in, change the rules about, we'll keep confidentiality, etc. What I tell people when they come to see me is, whatever you tell me when you're in a session with me, you have the privilege of confidentiality. I won't tell anybody what goes on in our sessions without written permission from you. And there's two reasons I'll break that rule. One of them is if I have any reason to believe you're going to hurt yourself or somebody else, and the other is if I have any reason to believe you're involved in child abuse or elder abuse. But short of that, but short of that, whatever you tell me in session is between you and me.
Yeah.
And so those few times where I have violated confidentiality, it has been because somebody, in my opinion, was either actually getting abused or in danger of being abused.
Yeah. That would be a great discussion to have with Marcella Pixley, is what about that uncle? My impression of the uncle was he was doing as much as he felt he could because there was some kind of fear or something. And it's not an excuse enough as I think about it. And he also remained in a degree of ignorance. I remember when the mother, the agoraphobic mother, comes downstairs and she's emaciated and crazy looking, and he says, "I didn't realize it was this bad." That could be a flaw in the book or something. I would love to have a discussion with her, and I could
Here's the idea, Susan, before we run out of time. It's a wonderful set of comments and questions, and my thought is that this is far more true to life.
Yeah.
Right? So that
right.
I'm not faulting her for writing it that way. My comments to you were, it was very hard for me to read because of the work I do, the education I have, the various similar situations I've seen throughout my career, but most people don't have that level of education and experience.
Yeah. That's it.
And one of the most useful tools I've encountered is the tool of having this filter over my perception that says every human being is doing the absolute best they can in each moment with whatever resources they have in that moment.
Right. That's it.
So in that case, in that way, the uncle was doing the best he could. However, since this one was being written, if this is a novel, if it's not, not autobiographical, but biographical for someone, then I would say, okay, if I were writing this, here's these early warning signs, and somebody recognizes them and takes action. And then the dynamics can play out. It's not a done deal as soon as that happens. There's usually pushback, right?
Yeah.
There's usually, well, I'm resisting, and you're, okay, and then I have to push back harder. To whatever degree I can. And sometimes the laws of the state or the laws of the city or county or the willingness of other officials might block me from stepping in. And I might risk getting isolated from the system. And then I have to make that educated choice about, do I stay connected to the system that's allowing or even promoting active abuse so that I can be a voice of reason, whispering in the ear of the person who needs it, or do I step up and speak up and risk getting isolated from the system to where I'm completely unable to help? And that's a balancing act that most of us have to walk that tightrope.
Yeah. Thanks for talking about that. Good.
All right. Well, you're very welcome and deserving, and thank you for the call. I will mute you so you can listen to the next hour, and I'll remind us all that we come from love. We're made of the stuff we call love. We actually are love, and everything else is false. Welcome, Jeannie Ryce.
Well, thank you, Dr. Tian. I appreciate you.
Same here. Have a wonderful show.
Thanks. Welcome, everybody, to the second hour.